For years, she wrote about fashion, its beauty, and its influence. Until one day, she looked under the surface and realized that there was a real human cost, an environmental toll, and an emotional weight. And instead of just reporting on change, she became it. My guest today is Bel Jacobs, a journalist, climate activist, and one of the most powerful voices redefining our relationship between creativity, consumption, and conscious. I'm Marisa Selfa, and this is the Impact Legacy podcast, where bold voices meet brave ideas to leave a better legacy behind. In this episode, we're going to talk about the truth-telling, courage, and the heart of activism, that moment when seeing is no longer enough and doing becomes inevitable. Welcome.
Thank you, Marisa. It's lovely to be here.
How did it all start? I mean, when did you realize that you wanted to be part of the change?
So I think for 13 years at Metro, I was, as you said, writing and experiencing fashion. And, you know, we can't get away from it. It's glorious sometimes, isn't it? The people that you meet are spectacular. The visual beauty that you're surrounded by is quite extraordinary. But I would say that even at the height of it all, I had concerns. I was editor from 1999 to the mid 2013, 2014. And in that time, the culture changed radically. So when I started in 1999, I was getting maybe 5 press releases a day. You know, I had to make phone calls for extra stories. By 2013, it was a deluge of material. And I think I saw in a very physical way that this was an industry that was expanding almost without limits, whilst embedding value systems that I just weren't comfortable with. So everything from, I know this sounds bizarre, but the gifting, the endlessly giving you free stuff for what? Things like, you know, do you get a front row at this fashion show or not? People used to get really uppity about who was at what fashion show and where they were sitting. And even then, Marisa, I was saying, why is everyone so obsessed with these things that seem very specific to this industry and to the culture that it builds up around it?
So completely agree. And, you know, that's something that makes me crazy as well. Going to all these events, you get all these things. And I got the other day this data that says around 40% of what we get for free, we throw it away within a week. It's madness.
It's madness. Marisa, I used to get entire trays of all the colours for, you know, an eyeshadow palette, and I would just empty them to the box, and people would come and help themselves around the office. People loved me in the office because of it. But again, it's a lot of packaging and product that, you know, was very similar to the product the season before. So, yeah.
So is this what really made you move into an animal rights and climate activist?
The sort of discomfort itself wasn't enough. And I think it came to a crunch point with Rana Plaza. I speak a lot about Rana Plaza. Yes. And I think, you know, you want to bear in mind those 1,134 people who lost their lives. You want to pay tribute to that. I remember being very shocked by the images coming out. There were the images that you could see in the press, but behind the scenes, you saw that these were ordinary men and women just trying to make a living. And there were some shots that, you know, had clothing labels that were very familiar. So people were dying making these clothes and no one was asking questions about it. So Rana Plaza was the ethical, the social justice turning point. And I didn't leave immediately. I remember trying to sort of, maybe we can fix it. But I think at some point you realize that you're working within a structure that isn't going to shift to help the workers that much actually, or isn't going to shift to make sure the factories are standing properly. You realize that there's something very entrenched in the fashion system. Ironic for an industry that says it's so creative and out there. The animal rights came in 2016, where I was asked to present a panel based around a film called My Fancy High Heels, which was a documentary made in 2010 about the Chinese leather industry. Honestly, Marisa, what I saw there, you just stopped you in your tracks. There's a lot of animal pain. There was so much animal pain for essentially cheap shoes. And I think the documentary was also very clever because it also said, well, it's also the people suffering in the system. You know, there were young women working on these fibers, these materials, working really hard, long hours for cheap shoes. And then if you just follow that through, what we do to cheap shoes is we buy a couple, we throw them away, we buy a pair for a night. But actually these are human lives and animal lives, you know, associated with every product that we then use so lightly. And the animal rights really came from that. I couldn't understand why this product that I was seeing everywhere around me, from shoes to bags to car seats to mobile phone cases, came from these animals who were suffering. It's wrong. So it's wrong, Marissa. So that was the animal rights transition. Yeah.
You know, Bel, I love that you talk about the Rana Plaza, because I remember
Yes.
that, and it was I was in fashion at that point, and it was such an incredible, awful moment.
Yes.
But as you said, very quickly we moved on into
Yes.
the next news.
Yes.
And can you repeat the name of the documentary, please? Because I need to see it.
Yeah. So it's My Fancy High Heels.
My Fancy High
Yeah.
Heels. I'll definitely look at that, because I think we all need to be aware of what that means, you know.
It's a hard watch.
It is. It's really remarkable. You know, I always say that moving from storyteller to change maker takes a lot of courage. And that's exactly what I believe you've done. Tell us, at what point, you know, do you think that we can make journalism part of the real solution?
Yes. I mean, that is a fantastic question. And, you know, journalism and definitely fashion journalism has been... Most fashion journalism works as a kind of marketing vehicle. And I certainly was part of that. You know, I would write about trends as if they were the most important thing.
I know.
You know, it is important to get a new handbag this season.
And this color, not another color.
Yes.
It has to be this one.
Yeah. And you do all those columns like, oh, I got 10 of the best beige handbags for the season, as if you sort of slightly expect everyone to get all 10. So it's quite... So we've created... We confirm these values as fashion journalists. Too many fashion journalists still do this, but you confirm these values of, we have to have these new items, and new is good. Don't ask too many questions about where it's made. Don't ask about the cows. Don't ask about leather production. Don't ask about the garment workers. Just consume. And then you have all these influencers, and then you have all these... Oh my God, actually, you know, even now as I think about it, Marissa, the way that I was so unquestioning in my journalism is quite stunning to me. And I think, again, yes, Rana Plaza was that moment where I can't keep contributing to this system. And I think, therefore, journalism has a role journalism always has a role in telling the stories that we need to hear, not the ones that we want to hear. This is a very key difference. And what we need to hear about now is that we are on an amazing planet that is hugely under threat precisely because of unchecked consumerism, you know, and that people are suffering and that animals are suffering. And actually, is that what we really want? Do we really want to contribute to so much human and animal suffering? And I often think in terms... Empathy has become a huge word for me. So you probably know, Marissa, I've worked through climate justice activism, social justice activism, animal rights activism. And at different stages, I've always wondered, why do people not hear this data and go, enough? And I have started to understand that it's because people don't relate closely enough to what the impact of these figures are on human and animal lives and on the nature that we often say we love so much. And so I've started to work more and more in terms of how can we connect people to those on the front line, human or more than human. And I remember sort of a very case in point, I was at a people's assembly. We were discussing sort of relationships with nature, perhaps. I can't remember. And I turned around to the person next to me and I said, did you know that at the moment in the Horn of Africa, 50,000 people have died as the result of prolonged drought? And I found this shocking. And half of those people were children. And so I really wanted to share this with someone who I knew was also very engaged with climate activism. And I remember he turned around to me and he said, I don't even know what to do with that figure. It's so draining, the size of it all.
It's better to forget about it, right? It's like...
It's almost
easier,
like...
not better, but easier.
It's easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that. I understand that we have to protect ourselves to a certain extent. But I'm concerned that... The flip side is that we protect ourselves so much that we think we don't need to act, or we think that someone else is sorting it out so we can just keep going. So I think empathetic connection with those on the front line is something I'm striving towards all the time in my journalism, coming back to where we started. You know, I still consider myself a storyteller, but the stories that I'm telling are different.
I think that's exactly what we want to do in this podcast. And I'm so happy that you're being so clear, because I find myself in my world when I talk in other conferences and other conversations, a lot of people don't know really the impact of certain things. You were talking about the drought. I talk sometimes about the water that, you know, you use in certain clothing for production. People don't know about it. When you tell them, they get shocked.
Yeah.
But I wonder how many people do something about it afterwards. I think it's very easy to say, oh, that's very inconvenient. I keep saying this whole situation of the world is very inconvenient. Like Al Gore said a long time ago, and I love that, the inconvenient truth, you know?
Yes.
And it's true. It's the moment that, you know, today we're giving information is for other people to act on it. It's not just, you know, let's have a chat. This is about telling what's happening out there and then do something about it, you know?
Okay.
If you were really editing like a major magazine, what would be really the key change that you will want to see through on stories, on the way we come through to the public?
The first thing you have to change is the mindset. So we often say within the climate justice movement, or, you know, in any movement of activism and advocacy, why the solutions are literally, they are genuinely all out there. Why are they not being taken up? And it's because we don't understand the urgency, we don't understand the necessity of these items or these procedures or these ways of doing. We have to, God, Marissa, it's so often. I run a tiny charity called the Empathy Project. The word empathy, and I have this theory of change. The theory of change is we love nature and animals and other people. We have to grieve for what we've lost, and we have to allow ourselves to feel a certain degree of sadness. Otherwise, we won't act to the next stage, which is taking up the solutions that are out there. True. So that for me is why mindset is key. When you talk about me editing a major publication in which we have this mindset of kinship with all beings, who's going to fund that? Do you know what I mean? Who are my advertisers again? I suppose they would be some of the agencies and advocacy groups offering solutions, but it's an interesting one. Yeah,
and it's part of the problem, because a lot of these opportunities to tell the truth have to be funded. Somebody has to be putting the money.
Yes.
And so it's not that convenient many times.
No. And sometimes I think about, you know, how big the figures are coming the other way. So I sort of found out recently that L'Oreal spends $14 billion in marketing. And how do you, you know, if you're an ethical makeup brand or an advocacy group, how do you meet that or match that? And then when you think about what L'Oreal produces, how much of what they produce is actually required on a planet in a climate and ecological emergency?
And how much is then, you know, ending in landfills and, you know, just thrown away? It's awful.
Yes.
Same as with the fashion world. We know that it's a waste industry.
Yes, waste is such a key part of the economic system that we're part of. If we didn't waste, they couldn't function.
Yes. So, Bel, activism often requires a lot of energy, resilience, and obviously I can imagine brings a lot of grief and exhaustion. Is that a right word? No, it's not.
Existential, I think, yeah.
Yes, thank you. How do you keep your resilience?
I've had to learn it I've actually sort of burnt out quite badly a couple of times, and particularly in animal rights activism, you see sort of evidence of really quite appalling human cruelty. It is important to stay resilient, because otherwise you won't be able to keep on going. So what I would say is that compartmentalization, sometimes just allowing yourself to go out to dinner with your friends and not think about any of these things and have a laugh and talk about stupid things, or the latest sort of episode of Traitors, you know, and be okay with that. Another thing that really helps me, and I talk about this a lot, and I'm still sort of feeling my way through it, is this idea of being in service. So I feel that I am here to try and help. and that if I am too depleted, I won't be able to help. So it allows me to keep going. So I've seen, perhaps I see a video of a dairy cow who wants her calf. I feel very upset with that, very sad for the mother. I sit with that for a moment. But because I'm in service, I get back up and I keep typing, or I make the next phone call, or I do that bit more research. So there's that element. The other thing that keeps me going, actually, Marissa, is I have a fundamental belief. I think people can be very cruel, but I have also a fundamental belief in the goodness of people. What I think they're lacking at the moment is certain degrees of knowledge and making connections. But I've seen it time and time again. If you give people a certain key bit of information about something, you can see them go, oh, I did not know. I think, again, the economic system that we function within spends a lot of time trying to disconnect people with the processes and the beings and what's happening. But I think when you tell people, they want to help. It's a very human urge to want to help and to protect what you love. It seems so fundamental. I'm going to, if I may, give you a very, very quick example about leather. I was teaching at Central St. Martin's, and the kids kept proposing ideas, articles around leather. They were more to do with styles and leather rather than where leather came from. And I just sort of said, look, I get it. I do get the very iconic status of leather, but let's look at this fibre. First of all, animal agriculture, where leather comes from, is one of the biggest killers of indigenous land defenders. If you really care about uplifting indigenous knowledge, perhaps we should not be contributing to this industry that is taking their lands and taking their lives. And so that was a connection, for example. So after that, what I would hope is that you see leather in a slightly different way. You see that it has impact in the Amazon, on indigenous land defenders, on the kids in the Amazon, and of course, on the animals who are often treated so badly within the leather supply chain. And those are the connections that I want people to start making.
Maybe this is the answer to my next question, because I was going to ask you, how do you keep hope when things move so slowly? I don't know if you have that feeling, but to me, everything is moving too slow. I have this sense of urgency in the world that not a lot of people have. So what keeps you really going?
I think I will return to that answer, that I think that essentially people are good.
Yeah.
And there is still so much to love. And if you can connect people with the wild world, and they will still find so much nourishment from that. So I love people, I love animals, and I love the natural world, and my role really is to try and support all of those.
So I want to ask you a bit more your point of view on business. Like there's this concept of slow journalism, like listening more and not just running with the first news and just publish. How do you think we can get that more embedded into leadership?
I think of, so not just leadership, encounters in leadership, I think of every encounter as an opportunity for change and uplifting. Genuinely, every encounter. So I just want to make people feel happier, but I also want people to think about things more deeply. And I want this nuanced, complicated, delicate, intricate, compassionate form of writing and communicating as a leader to start taking over everything, really. I think this is the part of the new world building that I'm so intrigued by. So, for example, people often say to me, what can I do? And what can I do now? I'm really galvanized, and I want to do something. And I can see that they want to sign a petition or donate to something. It's not that. You can actually create the future now in the way that you are. So if you walk out of here with this idea in your head that you are here to take care of the earth, you'll walk out of here in a different way. If your idea is, I want to make people feel good about themselves and ready to take on the challenges that are presented and smell the incredible sense of an autumn evening and watch in wonder as the pigeons fly overhead. You can do that in the way we communicate, in the way we write, in the way we speak. And I think that for me is empathetic leadership as well. You're leading by example.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I wish we were teaching this at schools already, because we're late for our generation, but maybe we're still on time for the next ones.
Marissa, I actually have an educational program in I'm writing it at the moment. Yeah.
You want to tell us about it, or it's too early?
No. Yes, so it's one of the projects of the Empathy Project, which is my cultural platform, which tries to change the way people see other species. But one of the ways that I want to do it is by going into classrooms.
Fantastic.
Because I think people have, kids in particular, have a natural affinity with animals. It sort of gets trained out of them around the age of 4 or 5. But I think if we can go in and talk to them about other species empathetically, but also engage them in different ways of being with each other. I have great hopes for this educational program, and I think the kids will be ready to listen to it. And I really want to talk to them about it because I think I could learn a lot from them as well. But you're right, we need to talk to the kids.
We do. And is this something you're just going to do in the UK? You think about doing that abroad?
Well, yeah. I mean, my resources are not so much that I can go global.
Maybe we can help at some point. We need people to help us.
That would be so cool. But yeah, we'll roll it out in March, April next year.
Fantastic.
And I'll keep you posted.
We'd love to hear about that. Well, this actually tags perfectly with the end of our podcast, in which I always ask our guests for a legacy challenge. One of the reasons why we're doing this podcast is to take action, not just to talk about the issues and to see how the world can get better, but what is that we can do? And I don't know in your world, but in my world with friends and a lot of people very, well educated, I get these comments many times of, well, what can I do? It's only me, this is like a drop in the ocean. But I do believe that those drops are the ones that actually make the change. So, Bel, what could I do myself and our audience? Something that anybody could do already this week or this month. Give us a challenge.
My challenge is, it's quite a big one, but I'm going to try and frame it in a way that makes it sound a little bit different. I would love to challenge people to reconsider their relationship with meat and dairy. And I know that this is a very loaded request, but if you just even begin to look at the statistics, we are starting to, many people already know, but I think the wider populace is starting to realize that the impact of animal agriculture on nature, on other peoples, on animals in particular, is very big. One of the statistics I do give out, and I'm very careful with them, is that only 2% of mammals alive today are wild, and that is dropping by the second. 60% of mammals alive today are farmed animals. There are 17 times more beef cattle than there are all wild animals on the planet. And those two statistics are connected. It's because 60% of mammals are farmed that we only have 2% of mammals alive today that are wild. These are massive statistics. So you go away with that and you think, what can I do? Well, I think that the most obvious thing that you can do is perhaps we stop consuming meat and dairy to this extent, and actually taken to its logical conclusion, if we really want to feel kinship with the natural world, maybe we need to stop altogether. I say this so cautiously, Marissa, because I don't want people to feel guilty, and I don't want people to think I'm another angry vegan. I'm a very grief-stricken vegan. But there's a reason for that. And so what I will accept now is anyone who thinks about this consciously. I want to protect Indigenous land defenders. I want to protect starving children. I don't want to subject other animals to this degree of suffering. And I want to save the wild nature that's on this planet. And if I can do that 3 times a day with what I eat, maybe I should consider this more actively. That's my challenge.
I love your passion. And thank you for those data. I mean, that data is really interesting because sometimes when we say these kind of statements without data behind, it's like, okay, well, I don't believe that is such a big issue, but it's very shocking. I was not aware of that.
The other thing I would say about the 2% is that these are the wild animals right on the front line of climate emergency. Someone said to me, who's going to bring water to the elephants when it hits 60 degrees? So are we looking at a world with no wildlife is something that we seriously need to consider. And, yesterday the first tipping point was crossed. So the tipping
I read
point,
that.
yes. So the coral reefs are going to start bleaching now, and that will start to impact everything. And that 2%, how do they evolve fast enough to adapt to what's coming at them? The droughts, the floods, the rainfall, and some of them are still being hunted. And if we can, by stopping the animal agriculture industry that has led to this phenomenal decline, if we can do that, why won't we? Is the question. Why wouldn't you?
Especially when we know.
Once you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now we know. You just told us.
Yeah.
Right? Bel, it's been really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Marissa.
This is exactly space for bold voices, and I couldn't have thought about a better one than you today to tell us about the situation and all the activism that you're defending. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marissa, for having me.
Bel showed us today that every story can be a real action for change and not just a way to keep silence. So if today's dialogue moved you, share it and join us on the Legacy Challenge that Bel Jacobs just put on us. I'm Marisa Selfa, and this is the Impact Legacy Podcast.